Thank you very much. And of course, we have heard in the last hour or so that 6 people have been arrested during protests in Birmingham.
In Birmingham, flares, riots and chaos outside Villa Park. 700 police officers from 25 forces deployed. 6 arrests made. 1 woman dragged away for waving an Israeli flag. A football match turned into a battlefield and the world saw it live. Nigel Farage called it months ago, "We've lost control of our streets." Now even the police admit they can't contain it. Starmer calls it leadership. But Britain gave the world football and now it can't even control its own pitch. The numbers tell the story. 12 intelligence alerts ignored, £2.3 million in security spent, nothing solved. The Home Secretary was at a gala, the Deputy Prime Minister was unreachable. Downing Street waited 9 hours before speaking. 40 seconds of words, zero accountability. 68% of Britons now believe the government has lost control. 17% still trust the police, the rest trust no one. Nigel Farage didn't need a briefing, he went live. "This isn't leadership," he said, "it's surrender in slow motion." 3 million views in 2 hours. Westminster called it divisive, the public called it truth. Britain once ruled order itself, now it can't enforce it. Intelligence ignored, warnings buried, streets burning, and yet they still call it manageable. The system didn't collapse last night, it froze. Power without action isn't government, it's theatre. And the curtain just fell. Nigel Farage didn't wait for calm. He went straight for the Prime Minister. "Starmer's Britain," he said, "can't even police its own peace." The clip hit 10 million views in a day, faster than any government statement in history. Newspapers tried to bury it. Social media made it viral. For millions, Farage wasn't a politician anymore. He was the only man saying what they whispered. Britain has lost control of itself. He showed the numbers. GDP down 0.4% this quarter. Police recruitment up 19%, yet street violence up 22%. 41,000 new asylum claims in 3 months. Overtime pay for officers up 68%. Patrol coverage down 30%. "That's not safety," he said. "That's collapse by design." Starmer's aides called him dangerous. The opposition called him divisive. But outside Westminster, the word people used was right. Every silence from Downing Street made his voice louder. Every delay made him look prophetic. Farage had turned outrage into a movement not for power, but for control. And control once lost doesn't return quietly. Order didn't break, it dissolved. Street by street, command by command. By dawn, police lines were just tape in the wind. The system Starmer promised would restore calm had gone silent. Birmingham stayed under lockdown. Manchester followed. In London, riot shields replaced traffic signs. The Home Office called it contained unrest. The footage said otherwise. Flares, fists, flags. 80 arrests, 30 injuries. 1 officer hospitalised after being hit by a glass bottle. The cost of leadership measured in broken helmets and burned vans. Markets opened lower. GDP forecasts slashed again. Insurers pulled coverage from city events. Temporary instability, Treasury said. But the numbers looked permanent. Confidence collapsed faster than sterling. Nigel Farage warned, "When the people no longer fear authority, authority ceases to exist." His words echoed through Parliament Square, shouted from crowds, printed on banners, looped across 1,000 live streams. The government still spoke of unity. But unity means nothing when no one's listening. This wasn't protest anymore. It was exposure. The mask ripped off a government that had already lost control. And what was left on the streets wasn't chaos, it was clarity. By noon, the government had stopped pretending. Cabinet meetings moved to undisclosed locations. Parliament sealed its doors. The military was placed on standby, not for foreign conflict, but domestic order. Helicopters circled above Birmingham. The footage leaked before ministers could draft a response. Public reassurance, Downing Street said, but no one was reassured. For the first time in modern history, Britain prepared for military deployment on its own soil. The document read, "Potential loss of civil control." Within hours, markets crashed again. The pound sank below 120. Foreign investors pulled out. Britain was no longer a market. It was a warning. Farage went live. When government fears its citizens, democracy dies, he said. The clip was shared across 40 countries. Starmer stayed silent. That silence became policy. The state hadn't fallen. It simply disconnected, a machine still humming long after the power was cut. Trust is measurable, and it was gone. 3 major insurers suspended urban coverage. Banks limited withdrawals to £250 a day. 90 council offices closed under staff safety. Polls showed 72% of Britons no longer believe official statements. Another 43% of officers said they would disobey protest orders. Leadership became a performance. Committees replaced courage. Each speech rehearsed, each apology recycled. The word reform appeared in 19 press releases. None had content. Farage's broadcast cut through the noise. You can't govern what you don't understand. 6 words, one truth. It was replayed more than any government address since lockdown. Foreign outlets called it the British fracture. Inside the country, people stopped asking when it would end. They started asking what would remain. Power didn't vanish. It drifted away from buildings, away from tolls, back to the crowd that gave it meaning. And the crowd was no longer listening. Westminster reopened under floodlights and rifles. The optics were damning, soldiers guarding democracy from its own people. Starmer entered to applause from a half-empty chamber. Outside, jeers drowned out the anthem. The Prime Minister promised strength through order. Farage called it panic through weakness. He demanded an inquiry into Birmingham. To everyone's shock, MPs on both sides agreed. Even Labour backbenchers whispered the phrase loss of control. Resignations followed. 1 commissioner, 2 ministers, 3 aides. Each letter identical. The system no longer functions. Markets didn't crash. They adapted, as if Britain's failure had already been priced in. Newspapers abroad called it the Empire's Mirror. The country that exported stability now imported unrest. Farage's final line cut like prophecy. If you can't protect truth, you don't deserve power. It trended for 48 hours straight. And for the first time, the government had no rebuttal, only silence and the sound of a nation rearranging itself. No banners, no chants, just 4 words sprayed across city walls. We remember who we are. In Manchester, veterans stood beside nurses. In London, teenagers carried candles through Westminster Bridge. Across the nation, a quiet reckoning spread, the kind no police order can disperse. Drone footage showed lines of light across the island, one flame for every broken promise. It wasn't protest anymore, it was reflection. A country looking in the mirror for the first time in years. Farage watched it unfold on air, silent. Even he knew something had shifted. Outrage had become awakening. There were no speeches now, only resolve. No parties, only people. The question wasn't who would lead, but who would still follow. Starmer watched from a locked Downing Street window. The crowd outside wasn't shouting. They were waiting for honesty, for meaning, for proof that government still existed beyond slogans. Britain wasn't burning, it was remembering. And memory is the one revolution no power survives. Security fences rose overnight around Parliament Square, but they kept no one out, only the illusion in. Starmer's ministers called for calm. Their words were met with silence. The briefings grew shorter, the apologies longer. In 1 week, 5 departments issued the same line: we are monitoring the situation. The public heard it as confession. Across the Atlantic, the White House urged restraint. Berlin offered support. Paris called it fatigue. None of them understood the collapse wasn't political, it was moral. Farage's final address broke every record. Britain doesn't need saving. It needs remembering. 10 million shares, 60 countries replayed it. Even those who despised him couldn't look away. Markets steadied, but faith did not. Churches filled, cathedrals reopened. Not for prayer, for clarity. People searching for something power had abandoned. Conviction. The state still stood. But belief, the thing that makes states matter, was gone. And without belief, laws are just ink. The riots are over, the silence isn't. No slogans remain, no heroes, just a nation staring at its reflection. Birmingham was never the cause, it was the mirror. A city showing what Britain had become: managed, muted, misplaced. Farage stopped talking, Starmer kept speaking, but the country had tuned out. Power still exists, but it commands nothing. Law still stands, but it convinces no one. Order didn't return, it was replaced by awareness. That control without trust is fiction. That peace without truth is surrender. And somewhere beyond the smoke, a new voice will rise, not to lead, to rebuild.